The mysterious lesson. The classroom was quiet, filled with students from different parts of the galaxy. All of them were part of the Galactic Academy, a school known for training the strongest warriors and most intelligent minds across the universe. But today's lesson was different. Today, they weren't going to study tactics or weaponry. They weren't even going to learn about advanced technology or the latest in space travel. Instead, they were going to learn about a planet, one they all thought was insignificant. Earth. The teacher, a wise and experienced being, stood at the front of the room. His species had lived for thousands of years, and he had seen more battles, wars, and civilizations fall than most could ever imagine. Yet today, as he stood before his students, there was a hint of something different in his eyes. Something serious. Today, the teacher began, his voice calm but with an edge of authority. We will discuss a planet that is often dismissed by many of you, a planet called Earth. The students exchanged confused glances. Earth, a planet so far behind the galactic powerhouses they had studied. A place full of primitive beings as far as they knew. What could possibly be so important about Earth? One student, a tall alien with blue skin and sharp angular features, raised his hand. "Teacher, forgive me," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But isn't Earth just a primitive backward planet? Why should we waste our time learning about it?" The teacher's eyes narrowed. "You may be surprised," he said softly. "What may seem insignificant to you can often hold the most powerful surprises." The class fell silent. That was an odd response. A planet full of weak, primitive life couldn't possibly hold anything important. The students had no idea that what they were about to learn would shake the foundation of everything they believed. The teacher clicked a button on the console, and a large holographic image of Earth appeared in the center of the room. The students leaned forward, intrigued. It looked like any other habitable planet, filled with oceans, forests, and mountains. The class murmured among themselves, not understanding why this planet was important enough to study. "We're going to talk about one of Earth's smallest and most dangerous creatures," the teacher continued. "This creature has no weapons, no advanced technology, and no natural defense mechanisms, but it is one of the deadliest beings on that planet." The students looked at each other, confused. How could something with no weapons and no advanced skills be dangerous? This didn't make sense. The teacher paused, giving them time to think. "This creature," he said, "is a spider." A low chuckle rippled through the class. A spider. They had never heard of such a thing being dangerous. Many of them had fought creatures larger than buildings. They had battled beasts with weapons that could destroy entire planets. A small Earth spider couldn't possibly pose a real threat. "You can't be serious," the blue-skinned student said, unable to hold back his laughter. "A spider? What harm could that do?" The teacher's expression remained calm. "This spider has something that no other creature has," he said slowly. "It's venom." The students grew quiet, sensing the teacher wasn't joking. The blue-skinned student leaned back in his seat, folding his arms. "Venom?" he asked, his voice still skeptical. "What's so special about that?" The teacher turned, looking each student in the eyes. "This venom is deadly. It can kill in seconds, even creatures far larger and stronger than humans." The room was silent. The students looked at the hologram of Earth, trying to make sense of what they were hearing. A small spider with venom capable of killing larger beings. It didn't make sense. Surely, this teacher was exaggerating. "This spider," the teacher continued, "is small. It's not fast. It doesn't have large claws or sharp teeth. But it is a master of patience. It waits, and when it strikes, it is deadly." The students were listening now. They couldn't help it. The teacher's words held a weight they couldn't ignore. A tiny creature, capable of defeating much larger beings. It was almost unbelievable. "Let me tell you what happened when one of these spiders was brought to a planet full of large predators," the teacher said, stepping away from the hologram. The predators were confident. They had fought, and one against beasts far bigger and stronger. But this tiny spider killed them one by one. They didn't even know what hit them. The class was still. The idea of something so small defeating beings that had conquered entire planets was almost too much to process. How could a spider, of all creatures, be so powerful? You may think Earth's creatures are weak, the teacher said, his voice growing more serious. But many of them have evolved to be dangerous in ways you can't imagine. They don't need advanced technology or giant size to be deadly. They rely on strategy, patience, and venom. A hushed murmur spread through the class. Some students looked at each other, unsure of what to make of this. The thought that Earth's creatures could be dangerous in ways they didn't understand made them uneasy. They had always relied on their physical strength and advanced technology. But now, they realized that Earth had something else. The teacher's eyes scanned the room. "This is not a lesson in how strong Earth is," he said quietly. "This is a lesson in how a small, seemingly weak species can be more dangerous than you could ever imagine." The room was silent as the students pondered what they had just heard. The teacher's words were sinking in. They couldn't ignore the fact that Earth, a planet they had considered weak and insignificant, might be far more dangerous than they had ever guessed. And somewhere deep in their minds, they began to wonder, what other surprises did Earth hold? The alien students' doubts. The class remained quiet, the weight of the teacher's words hanging in the air. The students sat in stunned silence, still trying to wrap their minds around the idea of a tiny Earth spider being capable of killing some of the most powerful predators in the galaxy. But some of them still weren't convinced. They looked at each other, their skepticism clear in their expressions. The blue-skinned student who had spoken earlier raised his hand again. "Teacher," he said, his voice filled with doubt, "I still don't understand. Are you saying that a spider, a creature with no weapons, no technology, could kill beings far larger and stronger?" The teacher's eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying," he replied. "This spider uses something that no weapon can match, its patience, its venom, and the element of surprise." The students exchanged looks, many still unconvinced. They had all been taught that power, size, and advanced technology were the key to victory. How could something as small as a spider be dangerous? It just didn't make sense to them. But one student, a tall, green-skinned alien with glowing eyes, looked at the hologram of Earth more closely. "So, you're saying that it uses its venom to kill these predators?" she asked, her voice thoughtful. The teacher nodded. "Exactly. This spider's venom is unlike anything most creatures have encountered. It's fast-acting and powerful. The creatures it kills don't even know what's happening until it's too late." Another student, a muscular alien with armor-like scales, crossed his arms. "That's all well and good, but how could a spider take down a creature so much larger? We've seen predators that can take out entire armies of enemies without breaking a sweat." The teacher's expression grew serious. "That's the key. This spider doesn't fight like you're used to. It doesn't rush in. It waits, and when it strikes, it does so with precision." There was a long pause as the students digested his words. They were used to thinking of battles in terms of power and force, but this was different. The idea that patience, timing, and a small deadly weapon could defeat them left them unsettled. The blue-skinned student leaned forward, his curiosity beginning to outweigh his skepticism. "So what happened when this spider faced these predators?" The teacher smiled slightly, as though he had been expecting the question. "That's what I'm about to show you," he said, turning to the console once again. The hologram flickered and the image changed. Now, instead of the peaceful planet Earth, the students saw an alien world, a place covered in dense jungles, filled with creatures far larger and more intimidating than anything on Earth. The students couldn't help but admire the strength and ferocity of these beings, who were clearly top predators in their own right. "These are the creatures that the spider faced," the teacher said, pointing to the massive beasts on the screen. They had no idea that a small spider was about to turn the tables on them. The hologram zoomed in on one of the creatures, a hulking beast with sharp claws and thick skin that seemed impenetrable. It was obvious that this creature was a formidable predator. The students murmured, impressed by its size and strength. But then the teacher pressed another button, and the image shifted. A small, unassuming spider appeared on the screen, scurrying across the ground, almost invisible next to the massive creatures. "Here is where the lesson begins," the teacher said. "The spider is tiny, but it has one key advantage: its ability to remain unnoticed. It waits, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment." The students watched closely as the spider approached one of the massive creatures. The predator seemed unaware of the small arachnid nearby, focused on something in the distance. The spider slowly crawled closer, inching toward its target. When the predator is unaware, the spider strikes, the teacher said, his voice low. It doesn't rush. It doesn't fight. It simply injects its venom at the right moment. On the screen, the spider jumped with incredible precision, landing on the creature's leg. In an instant, it sank its fangs into the tough skin. The predator jerked in surprise, but didn't have time to react before it collapsed. The venom was fast-acting, taking hold almost immediately. The students gasped in disbelief. The creature, so powerful and so large, had fallen in seconds. It didn't even have time to defend itself. "This is the power of patience," the teacher said, watching his students carefully. The predator never saw it coming, and by the time it realized what was happening, it was too late. The students were silent now. They had seen battles fought in the skies, in the stars, with weapons and armor. They had seen wars waged with armies and spaceships. But this was different. This small spider, with no technology or strength, had taken down one of the fiercest creatures they had ever seen. The teacher paused, allowing the lesson to sink in. It's not always about strength. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is what you don't see. And on Earth, there are many creatures that can teach you this lesson. As the teacher let the silence hang in the room, the students' doubts began to fade. They realized that Earth, despite its primitive appearance, held secrets and dangers they had never even dreamed of. A tiny spider had just shown them that even the mightiest could be brought down by the most unexpected means. The fear begins to sink in. The room was now filled with a tense silence, as the students tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The image of the giant predator crumpling to the ground under the influence of a tiny earth spider's venom replayed in their minds. They had been trained in combat tactics, advanced technology, and space warfare. But this was a completely new concept. The teacher watched his students closely, knowing that the shock was only beginning to settle in. They were still processing the idea that something as small as a spider, without any weapons, without any armor, could take down creatures far stronger than themselves. This was a lesson unlike any other they had ever learned. One of the students, a tall, four-armed alien with shimmering scales, finally spoke up. His voice was shaky, a sign that the reality of the situation was starting to hit him. But if a tiny creature like that spider could defeat one of the strongest predators we've ever seen, what else on Earth could be dangerous to us? The teacher took a slow breath, his gaze focused on the group. That's exactly the point. Earth's creatures may seem small and insignificant compared to the mighty beings of the galaxy, but you underestimate them at your own risk. A murmur ran through the students. This was something they weren't prepared for. They had never considered the possibility that Earth's natural wildlife could be so dangerous, especially when compared to the more technologically advanced races in the galaxy. They were warriors, used to fighting with their advanced weapons and superior tactics. But a spider? It didn't make sense. But what if we face one of these creatures? The green-skinned student who had spoken earlier asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now. How do we defend ourselves against something we can't even see coming? The teacher nodded, acknowledging her concern. This is why Earth's creatures, while small, are so dangerous. They don't announce their presence. They don't show their cards. They strike when you least expect it. He walked slowly around the room, letting the weight of his words sink in. And that's what makes them so effective. They have learned how to survive by using patience, stealth, and precision. And this, my students, is something that every warrior should understand. Another student, this one covered in crystalline armor, raised his hand. But surely we could just destroy the spider or avoid it. How could a single small creature truly pose such a threat to us? The teacher paused, considering the question carefully. It's not just the spider. It's everything else on Earth. The creatures there have evolved to thrive in their environment, to survive by any means necessary. Some of them are much more dangerous than you can imagine. He turned back to the hologram of Earth, which had changed again to show a variety of creatures. Some were predatory, others more passive, but all had one thing in common. They had survived and evolved in one of the most unforgiving environments in the universe. The teacher continued, humans, too, are part of this system. They may seem weak compared to your advanced species, but they have one thing that makes them incredibly dangerous. They adapt. When faced with danger, humans don't just fight to survive. They evolve, learn, and find ways to overcome even the most impossible odds. A low hum filled the room as the students absorbed this new perspective. They had always been taught to trust in their technology, their superior strength, and their ability to control the battlefield. But now they were being forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. One student, who had remained silent up until now, spoke in a hushed voice. So, you're saying we could be defeated by something so small and so unexpected? The teacher looked at the student with a somber expression. Yes, if you are not careful, you could be defeated by the things you cannot see or understand. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence as the students processed the full impact of what the teacher had said. They had trained for years, studying the art of war, developing technologies that could wipe out entire fleets of enemies. But they had never prepared for something like this, a creature so small, so subtle, that it could defeat them without them ever knowing it was there. The tall, green-skinned student from earlier spoke again, this time with a hint of fear creeping into her voice. Are we truly that vulnerable? The teacher smiled slightly, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was a reminder that in this galaxy, there were always bigger and stronger forces at work, things beyond their comprehension, beyond their technology, and beyond their control. No one is invincible, the teacher said softly, not even the greatest warriors. But understanding your vulnerabilities and learning how to survive is the first step to becoming truly dangerous. The students exchanged glances, their earlier confidence now shaken. The weight of the lesson had landed on them, and it was clear that the fear was starting to set in. For the first time, they realized that they were not the unstoppable force they had always believed themselves to be. They were not immune to the dangers of the universe, and on Earth, a tiny spider had just proven it. The realization of Earth's terrifying power. The quiet murmur of disbelief echoed through the classroom. The students, once so confident in their superior strength and technological prowess, now sat with their minds racing. The idea that Earth, a seemingly insignificant planet in the vast expanse of the galaxy, could harbor creatures that could challenge them was more than unsettling. It was terrifying. The teacher stood before them, watching as they wrestled with the implications of their lesson. He knew the aliens were used to their powerful fleets and cutting-edge weaponry, but this was a different kind of challenge. It was one that didn't rely on overwhelming force or superior technology. It was a challenge that required understanding, patience, and adaptability. You see, the teacher began, breaking the silence. It's not about size or strength. It's about how a creature can use its environment, its skills, and its mind to overcome obstacles. A spider, small as it is, has developed methods of defense and attack that allow it to survive in an environment full of far larger and more dangerous creatures. He pointed toward the holographic image of Earth once again, showing the spider in action, crawling silently through the underbrush, spinning its web with precise care, and preparing to strike without warning. The students leaned forward, their previous confidence now replaced with intrigue. Their universe had been one of immense power and unimaginable weapons, but Earth's creatures were something else. They fought with the rawest forms of survival instinct, using their surroundings and instincts rather than advanced technology. "This spider is just the beginning," the teacher continued. "It is not unique in its ability to conquer through stealth and patience. There are creatures on Earth that have evolved to use the simplest tools in ways you cannot even imagine. It's the unpredictability of Earth's ecosystems that makes it such a dangerous place." One of the students, a tall alien with gleaming purple skin, raised a question. "But why hasn't the galaxy taken Earth seriously before? We have armies and weapons that could easily wipe them out, so why would we need to worry about a planet full of creatures like this?" The teacher's expression grew more serious. "That's the mistake. Earth may not have the massive fleets or towering war machines like you do, but they have something you don't: resilience. And that resilience is something that the greatest warriors of the galaxy have often underestimated." A ripple of discomfort passed through the students. They were no longer laughing at Earth. Their previous amusement at the thought of such a small planet hosting such dangerous creatures had been replaced with a dawning understanding that the balance of power was not as simple as they had thought. "Take a look at the history of human civilization," the teacher said, bringing up another hologram. "Humanity, for all its lack of technological superiority, has fought wars, survived disasters, and faced extinction time and time again. And do you know what they do when they are pushed to the brink? They come up with solutions that no one else could think of. They adapt, they fight back, and they find a way to win." The alien students exchanged glances. The realization was sinking in. Their galaxy was full of warriors, fleets, and advanced technology, but Earth had something more unpredictable. The humans didn't rely on the same rules they were used to. Their ability to improvise, to turn the smallest advantage into a victory, was an entirely new concept to these alien students. The teacher's voice softened. "It's not the biggest creature that wins in the end. It's the one who can outlast the others, the one who can adapt and fight smartly. The spider, for all its small size, knows this well, and so do the humans." The atmosphere in the room grew heavier. The weight of what the teacher was saying hung in the air, and the students began to understand just how deeply they had underestimated Earth. They were no longer laughing. They weren't even questioning. The realization that their entire understanding of strength and power might be flawed was too overwhelming to ignore. The teacher took a step back, giving them a moment to process. "Now let me show you something that will change the way you think about this planet." He pressed a button on his console, and a new hologram flickered to life. This time, it showed a battlefield, not one filled with towering warships or advanced weaponry, but with humans using simple tools, basic, everyday objects. The students watched in stunned silence as humans used their ingenuity to outmaneuver their enemies, turning even the most mundane surroundings into deadly traps. They saw humans face larger, more powerful creatures with only their wits and simple weapons, and time again, the humans emerged victorious. The green-skinned student, who had spoken up earlier, now looked pale. "But how is this possible? How can they defeat creatures so much stronger than them?" The teacher smiled grimly. "That's the question, isn't it? How do they do it? The answer is simple. Humans fight not with strength, but with strategy. They adapt, they learn, and most of all, they never give up." The students sat in stunned silence, processing the video in front of them. They had been taught that power meant size, strength, and advanced technology, but this was different. They were witnessing a species that fought on a completely different level, one they had never even considered. The realization hit hard. Earth wasn't just a small planet full of dangerous creatures. It was a land of survivors, innovators, and warriors who fought with the greatest weapon of all: intelligence. And the lesson was clear: underestimate humanity, and you would pay the price. The awakening of fear. The lesson had taken a turn. What started as an entertaining curiosity about Earth's most seemingly trivial creatures had turned into a chilling revelation. The alien students, once so sure of their superiority, now sat in tense silence, each struggling with the fear that was quietly creeping in. The teacher could feel the shift in the room. He watched their faces transform from skepticism to awe, from amusement to dread. They were beginning to understand the lesson, and it was a truth that was difficult to accept. These humans, one of the students spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. They can defeat things far stronger than them. They don't fight like we do. The teacher nodded. Exactly. And that is the core of Earth's power. Their ability to fight in ways we cannot predict. They don't rely on sheer force alone. They are not limited by their size or their strength. Their power comes from their ability to think, to adapt, and to fight in ways that are foreign to us. The room was silent once again. The students could no longer deny it. They had seen the evidence, watched the footage, and heard the teacher's words. They had underestimated Earth's creatures, and now they were beginning to realize how dangerous this planet truly was. A tall, blue-skinned student, who had been quiet throughout the lesson, raised his hand hesitantly. But if these humans are so powerful in their own way, why haven't they taken over the galaxy? Why do they remain on their tiny planet? The teacher regarded him for a moment before answering. That is the mystery. Perhaps they are still too young, too fragmented to understand their full potential. Perhaps they simply have no interest in conquering other civilizations, but that does not mean they are weak. It only means they have chosen not to act on their power. But if they ever decided to, another student added, his voice full of dread, what would happen? The teacher's eyes hardened. That is a question we do not want to answer. But I will tell you this. No one in the galaxy has ever truly tested humanity. No one has ever given them the chance to show what they can do when pushed to their limits. The students exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of humanity, a seemingly insignificant species, rising up to challenge the mighty empires of the galaxy was an unsettling thought. It wasn't that humans were the biggest, the strongest, or the most advanced. It was that they were unpredictable. They fought differently, with an ingenuity that made them more dangerous than any fleet or weapon. One of the students, a small insectoid alien, nervously fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. So if we had to face them, we could lose. The teacher didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to the hologram and zoomed in on one of the human battles, showing a group of soldiers facing a much larger, more powerful opponent. The human soldiers, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, fought not with brute strength, but with creativity and strategy. They used the terrain, the environment, and even the weaknesses of their enemy to their advantage. The insectoid student watched in silence, the fear becoming more palpable in the room. I see, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. They fight smart. They don't just use force. Exactly, the teacher said, and that is why they are so dangerous. They do not fight like any other species in the galaxy. They fight with intelligence, and that intelligence has the power to turn the tide of any battle. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The students could feel the weight of what they had just learned. Earth, a small, seemingly insignificant planet, was not to be underestimated. Humanity's potential was limitless, and the more they thought about it, the more they realized that any civilization that dismissed them as weak or insignificant was making a grave mistake. The teacher's voice broke the silence. Now you understand why I wanted to teach you this lesson. The galaxy has long seen humanity as a primitive, insignificant species, but that is a dangerous assumption. As long as humanity remains underestimated, they remain unpredictable. And that unpredictability makes them a force that no one can afford to ignore. As the lesson concluded, the students slowly filed out of the classroom, their minds racing with the knowledge they had just gained. The fear was no longer a subtle whisper. It was a full-blown realization. Humanity was not weak. They were a species capable of unimaginable feats, capable of turning the tide of a battle with their ingenuity alone. One of the students, the green-skinned one who had asked the question about Earth's warriors earlier, turned to the teacher before leaving. "Teacher," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear, "will we ever have to face them?" The teacher gave him a somber look, his eyes filled with understanding. "Let's hope not, because if humanity ever decides to turn its attention to the stars, it will be a fight none of us are truly ready for." The hidden power of humanity. As the students left the classroom, their minds were still grappling with the staggering revelation. They had entered the lesson with smug confidence, certain that they would leave with a newfound sense of superiority. But instead, they left with a profound sense of fear and respect for a species they had once considered weak. The teacher, standing at the front of the room, watched them leave with a look of deep concern on his face. He had spent years teaching his students about the dangers of underestimating any species, but humanity, in particular, had been a topic of great importance. They were not like the other races in the galaxy. They were not bound by tradition or history, nor were they shackled by the same fears and limitations that plagued so many others. Humanity was a species that could not be predicted. They had shown time and time again that they could survive the most hostile of environments, overcome the greatest of odds, and find solutions where none existed. And now, they had learned that humans could fight in ways that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. In the quiet of the classroom, the teacher's thoughts turned to the recent events that had sparked his lesson. The humans' response to the alien invasion, their swift and brutal actions, had left an indelible mark on the galaxy. The invading force, which had once considered itself the dominant power in the galaxy, had been crushed under the weight of humanity's unexpected response. The teacher knew that the other alien civilizations were beginning to take notice. They had no choice but to. Humanity had shown them something they had never seen before, a species capable of ending wars, not through sheer force, but through intelligence and innovation. The humans had proven that they could outsmart and outmaneuver any opponent, no matter how powerful. The teacher turned toward the holographic display and brought up images of the humans' battles, their strategic brilliance on full display. He focused on the moments when human forces, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, had turned the tide in their favor. It was not the size of their weapons or the strength of their soldiers that had won the day, but their ability to think on their feet, to adapt to the battlefield in ways that no one else could. As he watched the images flicker before him, the teacher felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had shown that they were not just survivors. They were conquerors in their own right, capable of bringing entire empires to their knees with their creativity and resourcefulness. The teacher's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a new student. This one, unlike the others, seemed calm and composed, his expression one of curiosity rather than fear. He had heard the rumors about the lesson, but he was determined to see for himself what made humanity such a formidable force. "Teacher," the new student said, his voice steady, "I've been hearing strange things about the humans. They say that they're capable of things that no one else in the galaxy could ever dream of. Is it true?" The teacher looked at him, his eyes filled with the weight of the truth. "Yes," he said quietly, "it's true. Humanity is unlike anything we've ever encountered. They don't just fight. They think, adapt, and overcome. They find a way when there is none." The student nodded slowly, processing the gravity of the teacher's words. "But why haven't we noticed this before? Why are we just learning about them now?" The teacher sighed. "Because we were too busy underestimating them. For too long, we dismissed them as primitive, as nothing more than a speck in the vastness of the galaxy. But now we know the truth, and it's a truth that the rest of the galaxy will soon have to accept." The student fell silent, his mind racing with the implications of this new knowledge. What did it mean for the future of the galaxy? What did it mean for the other civilizations that had once believed themselves to be invincible? Before he could ask any more questions, the teacher turned back to the holographic display. "Let me show you something," he said, a new sense of urgency in his voice. He quickly brought up an image of a massive alien warship, one of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. The ship was preparing for an assault on Earth, convinced that the humans would be easy prey. But as the teacher clicked through the images, the student saw something that made his heart race. The warship was in ruins. The humans, using their unmatched intelligence and unconventional tactics, had infiltrated the ship's systems and disabled its weapons. What followed was an overwhelming counterattack, one that left the alien forces in disarray and retreating in fear. This, the teacher said grimly, is just one example of what humanity is capable of. They have the power to end wars, not through destruction, but through strategy. They can defeat empires with nothing more than their minds. The student watched in awe and horror as the final images flashed on the screen, the aftermath of humanity's victory. The alien forces, once so sure of their superiority, now scattered and broken, while Earth stood victorious, their minds focused on the next challenge. The teacher turned to the student, his voice grave. "Now do you understand why humanity is such a threat? They are not like us. They do not fight like we do. And they will never stop fighting." The student nodded slowly, his fear now a deep, abiding respect. "I understand," he said quietly. "Humanity is not to be underestimated." The teacher gave a small nod. "And never forget, the most dangerous weapon humanity has is its mind. That is the real power of Earth." The galaxy's reckoning. The news of humanity's surprising victory over the alien warship spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Planetary governments, galactic councils, and interstellar corporations could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity was no longer a species to be overlooked. They had become a force that the galaxy would have to reckon with, a force that could reshape the balance of power. In the command center of a distant alien empire, the leaders watched the news feeds from Earth, their faces a mixture of disbelief and growing concern. A once dominant race had been humbled by a species that many thought was still in its infancy compared to the vast, ancient civilizations of the stars. How could this be? How could humanity, with its relatively small and isolated planet, have grown so strong so quickly? One of the higher-ranking officers, a veteran strategist, slammed his fist on the console. "We have been complacent. We thought Earth was a backwater. We thought they were easy prey. And now we are paying for our arrogance." Another officer, a younger, more optimistic strategist, tried to argue. "But their tactics, they are unorthodox. We couldn't have predicted them. Their strategy, how could we have known they could infiltrate our most secure systems?" The older officer cut him off sharply. "That's the point. They think in ways that no one else does. They see what we don't see. They exploit weaknesses that we didn't even know existed. They don't fight like we do. They outsmart us." The room fell into tense silence as they processed the implications. The implications were far-reaching. Humanity wasn't just a thorn in their side. They were a revolution waiting to happen. The kind of victory humanity had achieved, one based on intelligence, adaptability, and sheer innovation, could change the entire structure of power in the galaxy. Elsewhere in the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. An alliance of alien races, once united in their condescending view of humanity, was beginning to fracture. The realization that Earth could endanger their way of life had forced them to reconsider their stance. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human race were having their own discussions. They had always known they were capable of greatness, but now the rest of the galaxy knew it too. The quiet, determined scientists and engineers who had worked tirelessly on new technologies, the military strategists who had pushed for new doctrines of warfare, and the everyday people who had believed in their strength had proven they were right all along. Humanity had not only survived but thrived, and now they had proven to the galaxy that they were no longer simply participants in the universe. They were contenders for its throne. At the United Nations headquarters on Earth, the world leaders were seated around a large table, discussing the path forward. The threat of further alien attacks loomed large, but the victory had shown that humanity was no longer defenseless. There was a strange sense of optimism in the air, even in the face of danger. "We have shown them who we are," President Carter said, his voice steady. "Now we must make sure they know this is only the beginning. We are not a species to be underestimated." A quiet murmur of agreement passed around the table. They knew this was true. But they also knew that the galaxy would never let them forget their audacity. The question was no longer whether humanity could win a battle. It was whether they could hold on to their newfound power and survive in a galaxy that was now aware of their strength. "You think the other races will let us go unchallenged?" General Vasquez, the head of Earth's military, asked. "We've made enemies today, and it's only a matter of time before they act on their fear." The president nodded gravely. "We must be prepared for what comes next. But we also need to make our message clear. We are not going to be intimidated. We won't go back to being overlooked." It was then that one of the senior diplomats spoke up. "Perhaps instead of waiting for them to act, we should take the initiative. Why wait to be attacked when we can be proactive? We need to ensure our position, now more than ever." A ripple of tension spread through the room. The idea of being proactive was one that no one had dared to entertain before. It would be a bold move, one that could provoke the wrath of the entire galaxy. But there was no denying it. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. It had the power to strike, and it had the resources to do so. "We'll need to show them that we're not afraid," President Carter said finally. "Let's not let this victory be our only message. Let's prove to them that humanity is capable of anything." Outside the command center, across the streets of cities and towns on Earth, ordinary citizens watched the news reports with a newfound sense of pride. The underdogs had won. The small, misunderstood species that had once been laughed at was now the beacon of strength in a galaxy filled with arrogant and advanced civilizations. But for every person who celebrated, there was also the awareness that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was not going to let humanity's rise go unanswered. There would be more challenges, but the people of Earth knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven that it could meet them head-on. As the human fleet prepared to defend Earth once again, the message was clear. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. They had earned their place among the stars, and no one would take that away from them. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity would ensure that it was at the forefront of the new order.